Why 6 million? I've chosen it because it's the approximate number of parts which make up a Boeing 747 aircraft. And why would I do that? Because 30 years ago, the scientist Fred Hoyle said this about life on Earth. The chance that higher life forms might have emerged in this way is comparable with the chance that a tornado sweeping through a junkyard might assemble a Boeing 747 from the materials therein. This statement is of course rejected by many as it's described as a logical fallacy. In other words, it has a basic mistake in its logic that prevents it from being true. For many, it's like saying the engine drives the car. It's true in a certain sense, but when you examine the car, it's not fully true in a technical sense. It's the driver who drives the car, and the engine provides the power. In other words, we have examined the original statement, the engine drives a car, and found its basic truth by altering the details. However, it seems to me that those who dismiss this statement on a technicality are simply nitpicking. Any statement can be misunderstood if you so wish. For example, if I said, I went to town on the bus, everybody would understand where I went and how I got there. But it's still a logical fallacy if you want it to be, because I didn't literally travel to town on the top of the bus or sat on its roof. I sat downstairs. So based on the definition of abiogenesis, Hoyle was trying to say that it was highly unlikely for all the essential elements for life to come together all at the same time and place and produce a form of life simply by chance. In other words, the chances that life started itself or put itself together are at least 1 chance in 6 million. Some would like the number to be higher, such as 1 chance in 100 billion, or 10 to the power of 11. 10 to the power of 11, that's the approximate number of galaxies in the observable universe. Or 10 to the power of 29, as that is the approximate number of stars in all those galaxies. But I'll stay with 6 million as it's a number that everyone understands. If I was told that I should bet on a horse that was running 5 to 1, I would understand this as fairly good odds, as I would receive £5 for every £1 that I bet if the horse won the race. But if a horse was running 20 to 1, I would have to assume that it is less likely to win, as I would win £20 for every £1 I bet. 6 million to 1. You must be joking. But here is the problem. The Earth exists, life exists. It appears that the impossible has happened. It makes no difference whether it happened by chance or by design, as the same amount of odds have to be applied to both. Well, actually, the odds would probably have to be higher for the designer theory, as he, she or it would have to be more complex than the design. So what's my point? My point is that because all this exists at such huge odds, it's just as likely or unlikely for a designer to exist at the same odds. If one exists, so could the other. Unfortunately, there is another problem. The counter-argument goes something like this. Because the numbers are so high for all the stars and possible planets in the known universe, and because there might be multiverses as well, in dimensions of space and time different to ours, this actually increases the chances of there being a planet with all the right conditions to support life. Well, obviously that makes sense, and I don't dispute that. Unfortunately, it doesn't solve the problem of life. Let's assume that purely by chance and sheer numbers, a habitable planet exists. Does this reduce the mathematical possibilities of there being life on that planet? I don't think it does, because the problem of life is unrelated to there being an apparently infinite number of stars and planets. Well, actually, there are two problems with life. The first is how or why it all started, and the second is how or why it evolved into the life forms that it did over millions of years. If we look at the first option, abiogenesis, that is, life from non-life, or living cells from non-living matter, the odds are still very high. Nobody actually knows how many elements are needed to produce life from non-life, and nobody really knows how it happened. Apart from the obvious examples such as heat, light, energy, water, carbon, a stable environment, and just the right amount of chemicals in the right place at the right time, scientists disagree on the details simply because what actually happened was so long ago and cannot be simply dug up from an imaginary fossil record. Abiogenesis may even be wrong, as many scientists think that life has always existed somewhere in the universe and may have travelled to Earth or hit Earth by accident in the form of bacteria carrying asteroids. This is called the theory of panspermia. It's a good theory, but it doesn't solve the problem of how life started somewhere else in the universe. So Fred Hoyle's statement still holds true wherever you are in the universe and whichever planet you happen to be living on. Now compare what he said with what Richard Dawkins said on the London bus adverts. There's probably no God. The way that we approach the existence of God is the same way as we approach the existence of life. It's highly improbable. But as I said just a moment ago, all those odds have been overcome and life started. The same odds apply to God, so it might be a rash decision to accept one and not the other. Unfortunately, this still doesn't solve the problem for many people, as they argue that given the huge number of galaxies, stars and planets that we know about, life would have a good chance of starting somewhere, by chance. However, the apparent silence, lifelessness and infiniteness of the rest of the universe appears to disagree. So I will leave you with this thought. It seems quite likely that in the next 10 years a form of synthetic life will be produced in the lab. Even a form of biological life might be created from other biological cells or bacteria with self-replicating abilities. But the irony of this situation is that whatever that life form might be, it will have been created by an even more complex life form. Even if the life form happens by chance, mistake or accident in the same lab conditions, there's still one thing we can be sure about. All the elements to make that life form were still produced by a more complex life form.